Hey everyone, in this episode of ChiTheatreTalks, I'm joined with theater director and casting director Matt Dominguez. We'll be highlighting Porchlight's Gypsy, as well as talking about representation in casting. Take a look. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt. I'm so excited to have you on the show. We've been friends for 3 years now. Mm-hmm. So Matt directed me in Glory Days back in, I think it was like June of 2015. Yep. That's where we met, and the rest is history. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What brought you to Chicago? What you're currently working on? That sort of stuff.
I have now been in Chicago for 7 years. I moved here from Missouri. I went to this little liberal arts school in Northeast Missouri called Truman State University, where I got my BA in theater. I always knew that I wanted to direct. That was always my goal. So
since what age?
Oh man, probably when I saw Aladdin in the movie theater.
Love that.
At first I thought I was going to direct movies, but then I will never forget this. I went and saw my high school's production of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It was the first stage show that I remember seeing, and I was like, what is this business? And from there...
Was it a good production of Oklahoma?
It was good enough to make me think, maybe I should consider
does
theater.
A high school version of Oklahoma exist that's like worth watching? But
I will say that Park Hill High School's version of Oklahoma was fantastic. Good. It got me interested in theater.
So we met because of Refuge Theater Project.
Yes.
And you're still currently working with them. The thing that I love the most about Refuge is that company started in such a similar way as so many do. I think that most companies that start that way, sort of without like a veteran of theater, a really like strong business-minded team behind them in order to make it succeed. I think that what's beautiful about that company is it was just a group of really passionate artists who wanted to create something beautiful. Within a year of its creation, it started making waves in the theater community, and now it's a Jeff award-winning company, and it's honestly turning out some of the best work in the city. I know that I'm proud to have been a part of that because, I was with you guys for, a year and a half as the education director, worked on 2 of the projects. And
our focus is on musical theater, and it's also a focus on musical theater that we feel never got a fair shot. Yeah, sure. It shows that never got its fair shot. So that's part of why we are Refuge. We're taking these shows that people have since dismissed and thought had no value or very little value, and we're like, no, we think there is something to them. Let us do it in a way that makes you realize that.
Tell us really quick what you're currently working on, when it opens, so that people can go ahead and come support you.
Sure. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of Refuge Theater Project, and we are currently in rehearsals for the last session, which will be opening at the end of October and running till December 2nd.
Check it out.
Yes, it's going to be absolutely amazing. It takes place in real time during a man's recording session of the last album he will put down in his life.
Where is it?
We will be performing it at the Arts Atlas Studio, which is at Ravenswood in Lawrence. Super
accessible.
Yeah, super accessible by the Ravenswood Metro line and the Damon Brown line.
Awesome.
And I'm actually also in the process of getting ready to do casting for Refuge's spring production of the Chicago premiere of Hands on a Hard Body. I'm very, very excited
I'm
for
so
it.
pumped for that.
We had so many submissions. I had over 200 Chicago actors submit for the show.
Exciting.
And I'm super excited, super pumped about it, and I will also be associate directing that show.
Awesome.
So I'm very excited for it.
So we went and saw Gypsy at Porchlight. First of all, Matt is one of my favorite people to go see shows with. He's such like a hype man for musicals. So I always have a blast when I see shows with him. I've been trying to figure out how to formulate the words because I truly think that we witnessed just something so special and so rare. And it's interesting because almost all of the shows I've seen at Porchlight have had this effect on me where I'm just like, that was just amazing. The last time I really walked away from a show feeling just awe-inspired in that way was Dreamgirls. And I am just so grateful that a company like Porchlight exists who cares deeply about the kind of works that they're putting into the world, as well as just like creating the most amazing work possible in the city. There was the most magical, amazing, seamless scene change I think I have ever witnessed.
We like threw our hands up in the air right as the button of the song happened.
And then, honestly, the amount of times that we, like, grabbed each other's legs to be like...
I got it. I was like, I'm not prepared for this.
No, genuinely. And, oh my gosh, Ife Butler.
I had been waiting for her to do this part.
Such a powerhouse. She radiates class. She has an irrational amount of talent. And the thing is like, to master such a ridiculous role, it's absurd how big that role is. I don't think there is another role like Mama Rose.
I think there is, and oddly enough, Ife Butler has played that role too, and that's Caroline Thibodeau in Caroline.
All right, I'll give you that.
I think she has now tackled two of the most difficult, complex.
That's the thing. There's just so much complexity.
Stunningly written roles for a female role.
I had seen this show. This is my 4th time seeing it professionally. Generally, I've enjoyed most of the productions I've seen. Right. I mean, you just can't go wrong with a show like Gypsy. Well, you can, but the writing is so almost perfect. You know what I mean?
A lot of people consider Arthur Lawrence's book to Gypsy the perfect book.
Yes, and I honestly I would agree with that. And that was probably my very favorite thing is the scene work of the show. I think it was seamless. I think the pace was phenomenal. That first moment. In the overture.
With the overture.
Oh my gosh. And again, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just literally from that first moment, I was on the edge of my seat.
I was like, I'm in.
Yes, I was hook, line, and sinker from the very first moment of the show. And we were talking about on the way home how the story itself translated so well to like a black family. Mm-hmm. There was nothing lost in translation. I obviously, like, every production has things to fix. Every production has ways to improve, but like I just enjoyed myself from start to finish. I was moved in so many beautiful ways. I've got to give a little shout out. Darren Whitney Harrell, also an alum from North Central College, also a transfer student, so I've just got already have a special camaraderie with her. I'm so proud of the performance she brought to the table. This is one of her first shows in Chicago after touring with Book of Mormon.
She made me care about Little Lamb.
And who knew that could happen?
Everyone knows this song's like a filler song, but
it was so beautiful.
It gave us all of the history of what Louise is,
and it was the first time. It was the first time that I had seen a Louise who genuinely I could tell that she was a child. You know what I mean? It was the first time that I saw Louise's real age in that moment of the show.
Not only in Gypsy did they focus on casting people of color, they also had trans representation in the show.
Yeah.
One of the strippers was played by Honey West, who is the Chicago icon, and
that number brought the house
my God.
down.
That you gotta get a gimmick can make or break a Gypsy just as much as having a brilliant Mama Rose. It was the showstopper it needed to be.
Yeah.
And so it was also really great to see Honey West take on that and play in Elektra.
And of course,
it was amazing.
Of course, I have to shout out my girl Elia, who my TLP fam.
And I've seen her in shows, and it's like she has a way of okay, if I got this feature part, I'm going to nail it.
She makes me
nails it, and
she makes me fall in love with her every
it's
single
really
time.
Fantastic.
Anyway, they run until November 25th. They are at, what is it called? The
Ruth Page Center for the Arts.
Yes, and that's their new home. Yep, absolutely worth your time. Absolutely worth your money. Do not miss out on this one. I'm so grateful that I got to see this.
Yeah, you want to be able to say you saw Ife Butler play Mama Rose.
Truly. Speaking of non-traditional casting, speaking of casting that represents Chicago demographics, all of that. I really, really want to get your perspective on representation and casting in general as a person of color, as a casting director in Chicago. I just think that you bring both an important and unique perspective on the subject. And so I guess my first question for you about that is, why is it personally important to you?
I think it's something that I connect with on a level in that we have to be able to see ourselves on stage.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's important, is that so many stories are not written by people of color. So therefore there becomes this default that these roles are not written for them.
Yeah.
I think this production of Gypsy, I would say that there were more people of color in the cast than there were white people in the show.
If not was, like 50-50.
Yeah. Mean, when you saw that Rose, Louise, June, Herbie, Tulsa, Mazeppa, so many of these major characters were people of color, that it says that, okay, we're creating a world that is unlike any Gypsy that you've actually seen. And I think that's so important to be like, guess what?
So first and foremost, you think that it's most important that audiences are given the opportunity to see good, dynamic representation and casting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's what's super important.
That's the first reason.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Because I think so many people think that they see white as a default.
Yeah, and I come from a background of LGBT activism, right? Mm-hmm. And I used to have these conversations in school. A good friend of mine would say, on the topic of heteronormativity, they would say, well, straight people are the norm. They are the default. And it just it never clicked for them. Well, not never, but at the time it didn't click for them that that's not true. That's just not true. Just because the majority of humans identify as something, or the majority of the people in a particular area happens to be that thing, that doesn't make it the norm. Just because more people's experience represents a certain skin color, a certain sexuality, a certain what have you, that doesn't mean it's normal to be those things.
Yeah.
Every individual's experience is just as important as the next. We have to step back from and run away from the idea that white is in any way the norm. Just because there are more shows written by white people, and just because the traditional casting of those shows happens to be primarily white people, that does not make that normal. Exactly. That just makes that history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's the battle that I think we are continuing to have to face.
What would you say personally? And then maybe what have you witnessed, sort of the community's response to people saying well, they just don't show up, or we just didn't find the talent. So
I think it is such an easy excuse to say, well, yes. in order for us to cast them, they have to show up. I'm like, that makes me want to know. Okay, so what are you doing?
Yes,
what is your audition notice saying? What is your casting notice saying? Because if the language in that is a turnoff to those people, they're not going to show up for your theater. They're also not interested in being the token person just to try and make yourself look good.
Yes. Also, are you hustling to get those people in? Because one thing that I admire you for is that you don't just stop at the submissions. You go after people that you want.
If I see someone, that's why I go and see as much theater as I can, because if there is someone that I don't know about, I want to know. Any good
casting director does that.
Right. I mean, that's just part of our job.
Yeah.
So I go out and see as much theater as I can, and that's why, I have tubs full of playbills because I need to go. If I saw that show, I need to know who this person is. I go and I start searching through, and I figure out a way to find out how do I get their contact information. I reach out to the theater. I try and look up on different agent websites to see if they're represented.
So your response is that it's more like this a weak excuse, right?
Yes, do the work.
How do you feel that the community has responded?
We see a lot of people being very blunt and particularly in social media, and saying oh, so this is how you decided to go about this. Here are all the problems I have with it. And we see people writing about it, sharing about it. They are calling out the theater by name. And the one thing that I am actually really tired of is theaters thinking let me apologize, do a town hall, and then brush it under the rug. Yeah. And I'm tired of talking about it. Just do it.
Yeah. Just fix it.
Just do the work.
What is your opinion about productions that happen to misrepresent actors, but then the rest of the cast happens to be people of color and inappropriate casting and what have you? How do you what's your opinion on that? Do we try to see past those shortcomings in order to support the other artists who genuinely deserve that job? do we demand that they start over, or you know what I mean? Like,
there has to be a responsibility on the theater, but also a responsibility on the actor. You are the one who accepted the job. You are the one who knows yourself. Or are you doing more damage to those who are trying to do the job, but is being overshadowed because I don't know why you decided that, like, I feel like in some ways there are actors who misrepresent themselves and don't acknowledge that, and that only damages the work that the other actors are doing. And I don't think that's really fair to them, because that erases those people, and that is you're now doing more harm than good, and they shouldn't have to pay for the sins of someone else.
I think that obviously there's no like simple answer to this. Obviously there's none of it is simple. But I think that so much of it stems from educational theater.
Absolutely.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's a million other reasons why there are still so many issues with the, subject of representation and casting and misrepresentation and all of that. When it comes down to it, like, there's a reason that these actors think it's okay to come into these notices, come into these casting calls.
Like, if you come from a school where there is not a lot of diverse representation, and yet you are working on, or shows are being programmed where casting is specific, but you ignore that, you come in with this mindset out into the professional world that, well, I did it then.
I look ethnically ambiguous, so, like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. So, here's the thing. In educational settings, I think there's zero excuses, because you already know your talent pool.
Absolutely. So
you already know what students you have.
You know that this is the pool that I have to pull from. So you have to program appropriately.
Yeah. So if you don't have Latinx actors, guess what? You can't do West Side Story. If you don't have Black actors,
don't do Dreamgirls.
Yes. And the thing is like, I'm starting to develop this opinion. I think that like even the sort of like debatable shows, there are so many shows that you don't have this issue. So why not choose any one of those other hundreds of options?
Yeah.
It's just not. If it's not your story to tell, don't tell it. And I think that the line is clearer than people want to believe. Like there's all these arguments of like, well, if we can't do this, then we can't do that, or that. And it's like, no, like look at it in reality. Is this an oppressed people? Is this story that I'm trying to tell a central part of an oppressed people's experience? If the answer is yes, and you're not a part of that group, don't do it.
Exactly. It's not. This is not rocket science.
Yeah, honestly. And I'm getting to the point where, and I've kind of always felt this way. It pisses me off when straight actors are even cast as gay men or gay women. I'm especially of the mindset that like cis actors should absolutely not be playing trans actors when literally there are so many trans actors out there.
Yes, exactly.
But it just, I don't know, it blows my mind because it's just so much simpler than people want to make it.
Yeah. I mean, perfect example, because I saw the Boys in the Band revival on Broadway, and it was the entire cast were gay men. Mm-hmm. So that is an experience that all of them have lived in. So
and it's,
they understand
and for me, it's less about like, can this person portray this story? Because as an actor, you should be able to do that, right? Mm-hmm. As a trained actor, you should be able to like step into someone else's experience and play it appropriately. That's fine. Like, that's literally what you're trained to do, but that doesn't make it okay for you to tell that story. And when there are just so many other options for talent that can tell that story because it's an oppressive story, like it's coming from a place of deep-seated pain that is not shared with other people.
We are at a point in this world where we are no longer taking that. So when it happens, believe me, you are going to be called out on it.
And we're also like, we're out of the PC era. Like people say what they want. Like they're going to tell you if you're being an asshole, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, that just has to be okay. That just has to be okay with you.
Yeah.
Because we have to be more responsible as storytellers. We have to be more responsible, and we have to hold ourselves accountable so that the people in power are held accountable.
No, that's exactly right.
In lots of ways, I feel that my own like opinions on the matter are only so important.
Sure.
You know, and as long as I'm being responsible and trying my best to be an ally, then I like feel okay talking about this, right?
Yeah.
But I hope that this is a part that, you know, this is a continuing part of this conversation, because even though I think particularly in Chicago, we are making strides, we are changing the way things are being done. Obviously, there's so far for us to go as a community.
Yeah.
It has not, like the rest of the world has not caught up yet. If you liked anything we had to say, let us know in the comment section. If you didn't like anything we had to say, let us know. Start this conversation. Like, don't be afraid of those things.
Things will only change. Things will only change if you talk about it.
Check everything Refuge is doing out. Please go check out Gypsy before it closes. Thank you for joining us again. Have a good one.